Hello, Johan. Welcome again to the Data 2020 Summit, and thank you for your input on the conference. We are glad to have you here. Before we dive into the questions, can you tell us more about your background in your area of expertise?
Sure. So I'm a lawyer. I have a legal background. I actually have a generalist background. So I got into the data privacy field around 1.5 years ago, and I work for a pharmaceutical company, Novartis, which is a big pharma company, and we have operations all over the world. And what I've been doing the last 1.5 years is basically building the data privacy team at Novartis out in the countries. So that's been my role, including Europe, I should say.
Oh, great. So the panel that you are taking part on today is on data privacy and data protection, which is nowadays an issue. So can you tell us a bit more about GDPR and how does it affect organization, especially information?
Yeah, so I think GDPR affects organizations differently depending on what you do, right? So there's industries will have a different perspective on data privacy, depending on what is the core business. So from the pharma perspective, we are a highly regulated industry. We've always been. So from that perspective, I think we're sort of used to a regulated environment. The GDPR itself uses the same principles and rules for handling of personal information as the previous directive. The big difference with GDPR is now that there is very strong enforcement, right? So you can get high fines if you don't comply. But there are also some new concepts in the GDPR. I think for most corporations, the biggest difference is that there's a requirement under the GDPR to now have an inventory of all your data processings. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge for many corporations.
So you already mentioned is a challenge, but since there are so many big discussions today on GDPR and data privacy, from your point of view, what is it that actually works for organizations when they hear about GDPR? Is it a challenge? Is it an opportunity? Or is it both?
No, I think it's both. I think when corporations first hear about GDPR, I think they see it as a challenge. I think that's a natural reaction. You see, oh my God, how am I going to fulfill all of these rules? And the rules are quite detailed. But I think then as you get sort of more deeply involved, you understand that applying the rules, if you do it the correct way and if you're serious about it, can actually be an opportunity as well. Especially for those organizations which thrive on getting data and need to establish a trust with whatever source you get the data from. Normally, it's your customers. For them to entrust you with their data, you need to show that you're compliant. And the GDPR allows you to build that, you could say, internal program at your company to reach that level.
So you mentioned something like implemented well.
Yeah.
So how can organizations prepare for such a nice, let's say, implementation?
Yeah. So I think that the first thing you need to do as an organization is to get the sufficient resources, right? Then you have to make a case to your executive committee or your board to get the resources you need. I think that's number one, because you have to realize that the rules are so complex and comprehensive that you need sufficient feet on the ground to be able to handle it. So that's number one. And then the second one would be to start doing your data mapping. We talked about it today during the panel. That's the first step is to know what you have, right? So you have to make that. You have to reach out to all the different functions in your company to understand what types of data they are processing in the different, from research to marketing, sales, and including all the support functions. So you have to map the data you have, and then once you've mapped it, then you can look at, so are we compliant? What are the gaps? And then you start fixing those gaps.
Clear. Thank you. So far, what would be some of the lessons that you've learned? So something that you would like to share with our delegate community? On this topic.
You mean from my previous experience at
yes.
the... No, so I think I think it's important to realize that it's so I have a legal background, so I've come from a sort of we have a legal setup at Novartis, but I think it's important to realize that it must be a cross-functional activity, right? So you cannot drive it by IT alone or internet security or legal or compliance. You need to involve all stakeholders more or less in the company. Everyone needs to be active to ensure data privacy compliance, because in today's world, I mean, most companies are oriented around data, and for many companies, the data is personal information. There's very little data at a company like mine, for instance, Novartis, which is not personal information. So,
challenging, pretty challenging. Thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.